I wanted to get on here and share something really crazy that just happened to us recently. And I want to start by giving you a backstory. Hope everybody's doing well. So, about 6 years ago, I met my husband. Well, he's now my husband. We had met, and he had 2 sons, and I have 4 children by a previous marriage, 2 boys, 2 girls. And so, we met, we fell in love eventually. We went through a lot, even early on in our relationship, because we both had such a strong calling for the Lord. And it was hell from the beginning. It was hell trying to merge 2 families. It was chaotic, trying to merge these kids together. So, because now there's a total of 6, And so, things went on. We went through a lot of trials, a lot of tribulations. We started in ministry, and it would fall apart just because, churches are really taking a hit nowadays. And I'm going to try to keep my voice through this. So it took a lot of hit on our marriage, but my husband and I love each other, and we loved each other so much then. But if you've ever merged families and merged children together, you know how trying it can be, especially for a Christian family. So I'm going to get a drink, guys. So, things happened over the years, and we've had a couple of the kids leave and go stay with their biological parent because they didn't agree with the rules in our home or whatever. And so that was really hard. So we recently went through this thing with my husband's biological son, one of them. He no longer lives with us. He was making terrible choices. And we were faced with a decision that no parent wants to have to make. But, guys, I'm going to try to move y'all. I've got y'all sitting on a cough drop. So, that's why y'all are unstable. Let's see what we got. Sorry about that. I'm not trying to make anybody motion sick. So, I'm battling a cold. So, I'm going to get a cough drop and try to get through this. So anyways, he was making terrible choices, and we had to remove him from the home because he was becoming violent and making criminal choices. So it's been really hard. It's been a very hard past few months for my husband, and I noticed he was getting really depressed. The thing about it is prior to that, I went through something similar with one of my biological children. So I had kind of already been through this, and you never get used to it, but you kind of just learn through prayer, to accept things for what they are, and you pray for your children, and you pray for a better outcome. So I could see my husband really sinking in depression, and I noticed that during this time, his other biological son, things started changing between me and him. Now, it's always been up and down with the kids. Like, one minute, me and this biological son will be getting along great, and everything's going great. And then the next side of the coin is, you're not my mom. And while they didn't always necessarily come out and say that, they showed that, And so, now, the other biological son, not the one that's not living here, but the one that still lives here, is acting out towards me, is being disrespectful. Like, we have a standard in our family, and we try our best to raise our children by the Word of God. So, we require respect. We require respect to everyone. And stuff started happening, and I would go to my husband, and it seemed like every day, my husband's coming in from work, and I've got something else to tell him that's going on. Well, my husband has a very soft spot for kids. He was never the disciplinary parent when I come along. We had to sit down and merge our ways of parenting together. And so he was still the more softer hand at the time. And, he was just really getting overwhelmed with me coming to him. And I didn't realize how bad it was. But he would kind of handle things, but not really. And these things would keep happening. They wouldn't stop with my bonus son. And so I was in a lot of prayer. I was fasting. I was reading my Bible. I was praying. I was crying out for my marriage because it was starting to build a resentment in me toward my husband, because I felt like he was really siding with the child, and only kind of handling things to try to keep me and him from arguing, me and my husband. So this went on for a few months. So it got so bad that I even reached out for counseling and tried to get my husband to go, and he went once, but the lady just kind of grandma'd him and didn't really, she wasn't the type of therapist he really needed, So because of money and just how expensive it was and stuff, we both kind of just quit going, and I was like, I'm just going to lean on God for this. So I really went to the Word. I stayed in prayer. I stayed fasting. And it just kept getting worse. And I would go to my husband, and we would fight. And I felt led to pull our kids out of traditional, public school and put them in homeschool. And my bonus son, my husband, was against it. We were butting heads. It was really, really bad. Finally, my husband's like, listen, if she's hearing God on this, we're just going to have to trust her. It wasn't coming together in agreement. It was, I want to keep the peace. I'm tired of the disagreements. So that went on, and I knew in my spirit through just discernment that we weren't on the same page, and it kept going on like that. We were never consistently on the same page about anything. And I know that in a marriage, you're different people, but you're coming together as one in God's eyes, and you're one flesh. But that doesn't mean that you're gonna agree on everything, and I understand that. But this was so different for me and him, because we are so much alike when it comes to spiritual things, when it comes to what's best for our kids, right? So we were just on the different pages all the time. And it's getting so bad, I'm starting to question our marriage. And I'm noticing that there's this huge wedge in between us. And it was his biological son. He wanted to go everywhere Dad went. But when Dad wasn't home, he was treating me with disrespect. He was being hateful. He was being hateful to my daughter. He was being hateful to animals. He was angry. But then when Dad would come home, it's, hey Dad, what are you doing? What can I help you with? So my husband was having a hard time believing that these things were happening when he wasn't home. So that is so hard in a marriage, especially a blended marriage, when your husband doesn't believe you or your spouse doesn't believe you. So, like I said, this went on for a few months. I didn't even feel at home in the home anymore. I didn't know where my place was anymore. And I was praying, I was fasting, but I was starting to feel so pressed down, so discouraged. My husband was so depressed, still drowning from the other son. And finally one day, and no, the Lord is not an advocate of divorce, but finally one day, I had had enough. And I knew that my bonus son was being blatant with the stuff he was doing. I mean, he was picking at me. He would go in the kitchen and rearrange it from how I had it. I would go in there and I would tell him, no, this is where I want this. I'm the woman. This is my kitchen. This is where I want these things. and he would blatantly go and do the opposite. And that's just surface stuff. It was to the point you could just really tell that my husband was having sympathy for him, but he wasn't hearing where I was coming from. So something had happened, and I had had enough. And I stood up and I walked out the door. And I took my daughter with me. In the past, when we've had disagreements or arguments, I could go to the car and lock myself in and be upset, and my husband would stand out in that rain until I let him in that car and we talked through stuff. He didn't even make sure, because we left on foot. We have 2 vehicles, but one is down. So me and my daughter left on foot. And when he didn't make sure that we made it to my oldest daughter's home safely, I was like, this is not my husband. Like, and the older kids are hearing this, and they're like, that's not Dad. Something's not right. So stuff goes on, and I'm gone, and he's not even reaching out to fix the marriage at all. I don't even hear from him, and I'm still praying with whatever strength I have left, because honestly at this point all I had was tears. Like, I cried so much. I have never cried so much in my life. And I had a Job experience, is what I call it. I sat on the ground outside my daughter's house in front of the grill of the car, and I wanted to die. I felt like I had lost everything at this point, and I just wanted to die. I had never owned anything in my life. I have a background of very bad poverty, but my husband and I were in the process of buying a home, building the home together. It was a complete renovation, buying property, and I walked away from it. And I walked away from my husband and my bonus children and my animals and my vehicle. I left everything. And I just felt like losing him, I had lost everything. So I had a Job experience. And I remember I was so weak. And honestly, I had ate. I don't know if I drank anything. And I just felt so lightheaded. Everything went blurry. And I could feel me like falling toward the ground, and I heard God's voice, and he said, open your eyes. And I opened my eyes, and I sat up, and I just cried, and I said, God, why won't you let me die? And so that went on, and I reached out, and I said, can we talk? And he came up to my daughter's house, and he brought my bonus son, and we spoke, and we talked for probably 2 hours. And I had been fasting and praying still. And it's like nothing was penetrating through. Like, no matter how much I had prayed or whatever, it just wasn't getting through. And my daughter was sitting in the room, the one that lived at home still. And, you know, that's the one I had took with me. And she's listening to me talk to Dad, her bonus dad. And nothing's getting through. And at the end of it all, he asked my bonus son, said, do you have anything to say to her? And he's like, no. They were planning to go visit my husband's dad. And I'm like, how do you go visit family, like extended family members, when your home is such a mess? And, you know, like I said, there was just so many signs that this was not my husband. So he's like, well, I could take y'all to get pizza if you haven't ate, and I could get you a salad. I know you don't like pizza. And then I was going to go to my dad's, and I'm just like, I don't want your sympathy. Like, I'll eat a sandwich, you know. You're not trying to fix anything here. This did no good. So they left, and some other stuff happened that was out of character. And guys, the devil had me believing all kind of things. And I'm still trying to pray with my heart in pieces here. And finally, you know, during that conversation, I need to add, I had told him that I have this turn off switch. I'll always love you, but I love so deep that if I don't turn that switch off, I felt like I was going to die of a broken heart, like literal broken heart. So, I had been having chest pain all day. My kids was thinking about taking me to the ER. I wasn't feeling right. I woke up with my left arm numb. I woke up with the side of my face numb. I didn't know what was happening. He knew about it, and he didn't seem too concerned. And like I said, that is not my husband. So, nothing, I didn't hear from him that whole day. And then he messaged finally, and he said, do y'all need anything? And I said, no. And then me and my daughter had been down here while he was asleep. Because see, we've been staying in a camper. We went in the main house and was getting some of our stuff. And I noticed he didn't leave for work because the car was still here. So we spent a few hours out there cleaning and throwing out stuff we didn't want and just packing. And, we had packed so much stuff by this time. And so, let me get a drink, guys. Sorry, I'm trying to get through this. Season change is not easy on me at all. But, I asked him, I said, when he texted me, I said, could we talk? Because I had got to a point where I was done, like playing games. If you want a divorce, tell me, but you can't keep my heart on a string. Like, we have to come to some kind of decision. And I wrote down key points I wanted to speak to him about. And so my daughter and I decided to walk down here. It's not really far from my daughter's house to here. And I've been on a health journey, so I enjoyed the walk. And she did too. So we're walking. I'm praying. I'm like, God, I just need something to happen here. I need you to do something. So we get down here. Still kind of the same thing. I'm crying. I apologize. Like, sorry that, I wasn't enough, I guess, because that's how I felt. He kind of started getting teary-eyed and was like, I'm sorry I wasn't either. But I looked at him and I said, but I do need to talk to you about some legal things. I said, I want the property to go into the divorce. So I want to help you pay it off. And something sparked in him. He's like, what? We've never had anything. I want to fix the house and give it to you or whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm not taking nothing from anybody, but I want to sell the house and split the cost. And something kind of like, you've seen something kind of triggering him, because this is a man and his land. It's a man, and we had put so much work in. So there's some pride in that, And so I brought my daughter in. And this is the daughter that's still younger and living at home. And I said, is there anything you want to say? And she spoke to him. She got some stuff off her heart. Well, my oldest daughter had come down, and she was sitting outside at the table. And I was packing all my stuff. Like, I was cleaning it out. And he got up. Me and him would talk. And it wasn't going anywhere good. So I told him what I wanted. He got up, made some coffee, going to go outside and clear his head. And my oldest daughter was sitting outside. And I went out there to talk to her, and he seen us, and he walked over and he said hi to her. And I looked at her because I'd been staying with her the past couple nights, her and her husband. And I knew she had some stuff that she wanted to get off her chest. So they started talking, and I walked away. My son came down with his truck to help me move. My son-in-law was helping me take our bags to the car. And I'm walking back and forth, and I see my daughter and my husband talking, and I see him crying. And I hear her say, what are you doing? If you let her walk away. Well, I didn't hear that part. I just heard her say, what are you doing? And so in that moment, my husband had like a blinder lifted off his eyes, and he could see clearly for the first time in a month or so. And he came and asked me to come sit down and let's talk. And everybody came that would, but my bonus son, he didn't come to the talk. he stayed in the front yard by himself. Because he didn't really have nothing to say the other day other than thanks for being a mom, thanks for pushing me. That's it. Kind of like a goodbye, like good riddance lady. But so we were all talking, we were all discussing things, and I had walked over to the side garden after we talked, and everybody kind of said things, and I added stuff, and I'm like, God, where's this going to go? And my husband walks over to me and he gets down on his knee. And he says, will you still be my wife? And he apologized for being so blind to everything. And I said, yes, I will. And he went and he got my bonus son and he said, you're going to go back here and you're going to make some stuff right. So he came back there. Nothing really changed with him, but me and my daughter came back home. And my husband put my stuff up because he didn't want me, and I still have stuff to unpack, honestly. He didn't want me to be the one to unpack that stuff because, it was so much, and he knew my past, and this wasn't the first time that my kids and I had lost a home and a marriage and had to walk and been without, and so he was very apologetic of stuff, and I could tell it was coming from a genuine place, like, this was my husband. This version this is him, right? Well, stuff went on, and a day or so passed, and nothing was. My bonus son's like, I'm gonna try and do better, and stuff just kept coming to the light, right? The Lord tells us anything done in the dark is gonna come to light. Stuff kept coming to light and coming to light. We kept talking to him and questioning him, and my husband like, I see clearly now. Like, I was so blind. Why is he acting like this? Why did he do this to you? So stuff goes on. And that night, the day the Lord just kept bringing stuff to light, we realized and we found out that he was demon possessed. And the Lord wound up delivering him that night. But guys, it was one of I've been through several deliverance situations, and when it's a child that you love as your own and you see those things in them, it's hard to accept, it's hard to face. And so to get into more depth, when I tell you that God orchestrated this whole thing, because the Lord, I'd always put myself in the middle of prayer. I'm right there to pray, right? But the Lord told me to put myself up on the bed. So I stood over here in the corner on the bed. And I'm like, God, why can't I pray? Like, why can't I put hands on him and pray for him? And my husband and him were over here, and there's a door right here coming. This is our bedroom to the camper, and there's a door that leads outside. And my husband was standing in front of the door, and our son was standing right here, kind of beside where I'm at right now. And I seen the demon manifest twice, and as soon as I seen it manifest that second time, like our son's face changed from the eyes to his forehead. The Lord told me now. So I told my husband, I said, lay your hands on him now. And when he did, that demon went nuts. He started swinging. I'm talking about punching. And my husband's just dead center in the middle with his hands on him, praying and rebuking Satan. And our son is just throwing fists and screaming, don't touch me, and like yelling, and all this anger and ungodly just rage. And somehow they made it down to the floor, and my husband's still praying. God was protecting my husband because neither me or him was hit during this. Because when I tell you fist was flying, like, this boy was strong, and it was not his strength. So my husband and him were on the floor. Well, there's this speaker, this huge speaker up above him, and he was kicking and frailing and fighting, and I could just in the spirit see the speaker falling and hitting him. So somehow I bear hugged this heavy thing and lifted it and put it down in the floor so it wouldn't fall on him. And then they stood back up and wound up back in the floor, And the Lord was telling me to tell him to say Jesus. Well, he said Jesus 6 times, but when he got to the 7th, he couldn't say it. And so, guys, I'm getting messages coming through. But anyways, when he got into the 7th, he couldn't say it. And I knew there was still a demon. So my husband was going to lay hands. I said, don't touch him. Because I felt the Lord speak in my spirit. He has to won't surrender. See, Dad had been going and taking care of this child for the past couple months. He had been playing like, I'm the victim. I keep getting grounded. I'm not doing anything wrong. It's all her. And Dad had kept coming to his rescue. But the Lord told me, tell him not to touch him. That he has to surrender this. He has to want this gone. And he needs to bow to me. He needs to surrender to me. Not to me, but to God, right? So the Lord told me to tell him, raise your hands. Raise your hands. And that's the only way this is going to go. And we literally watched him fight like this. His hands was just shaking and it was in fists. And it was like he was literally being bound by something we couldn't see. And he couldn't get his arms raised. And me and my husband just stood. He stood in his corner, I stood in my corner. And we had our hands raised or extended out. And we were speaking in tongues and praying the blood of Jesus. And eventually his hands shot free. And when he shot free, he stood up, jumping to his feet, and he said, I've been delivered. I'm set free. I'm set free. And he's yelling, but it's a different yell. This is a yell of victory. This is a yell of freedom. He had been set free. And I felt the heaviness lift. My husband was under a spirit of oppression. Our son was possessed. And I was carrying depression from not being seen or heard. The devil came to kill, steal, and destroy. And there's so many stories I could go to in the Bible. But I chose this one because it has to do with the son. So go with me, if you will, or if you want to write this down, to Matthew 17. And we're going to go to 14. Matthew 17 and 14. And when they were come to the multitude, there came to him a certain man, kneeling down to him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is a lunatic, and sore vexed, for oftentimes he falleth into the fire, and oft into the water. And I brought him to thy disciples, and they could not cure him. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him hither to me. And Jesus rebuked the devil, and he departed out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then came the disciples to Jesus apart, and said, Why could not we cast him out? And Jesus said unto them, Because of your unbelief. For verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as the grain of a mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, Remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. Howbeit this kind goeth out, but by fasting and prayer. Well, it says prayer and fasting, but yeah. So Matthew 17, 14 through 21. So guys, here's the thing. When I first seen the demon manifest in this child, I bowed my head and I said, Lord, I know what your word says. That some come out not but through fasting and prayer. And the thing was, I had been fasting. So I said, Lord, I'm going to need your strength, right? So, and then you got another Judas I don't know how to say his name right. Iscariot, you know, he's the one that sold Jesus out. He's the one that turned Jesus in. And he was possessed. And the devil come to kill, steal, and destroy, right? So, him turning Jesus in led to Jesus' crucifixion. Well, that had to be done. And Judas was just a part of the story, right? So what the devil meant for Jesus bad was already turned around for his good. But the ending of Judas was suicide. So when you look at our story, what had happened in our family, the devil was working through our son to kill our marriage. He was working through our son to kill mine and my son's relationship that had been built, to kill him and his sister's relationship that had been built. Guys, maybe you're like us and your family is struggling, and it's not just a normal struggle. you're a Christian family and it's heavy and you feel alone. Maybe you've been praying for a spouse or a child or a change, but nothing seems to be happening. Just hold on. Keep fasting and praying, because God is true to His word. I have my grandbaby on, and she's waking up. But, if you need prayer, how can you tell if it's just bickering or if it's demonic? Anyways, bickering is division, right? So the devil's trying to get his hand in your marriage. Get that under the blood. But if your child is acting out of character and they continue, and you're praying for this person, and it seems like you're the only one praying, right? And maybe someone else is acting out of character, and it seems like your whole house is falling apart. The men are to be the Godhead, the leaders in the home. So you have God, and you have spouse, and then you have your children, right? If you're going by the biblical way. So what I'm saying by Godhead, what I'm saying is, it's up to the husband to listen to God and lead his home, but also to stand beside the wife, and the wife is to support and submit to the husband, right? So in our home, and I kept feeling in the spirit, we have to get order in our home, honey. We have to get order. But he was in that cloud of oppression, and he just couldn't see clearly. So now we're in the stage of praying for order in our home, and him taking that authority back, and him putting me where I belong, and then our children being in the order of the biblical order that we read in the Bible. Because one day our children's going to leave us, and our marriage has to be okay. So, guys, if y'all need prayer, if you're interested in, studying more biblical order, but if you would, continue to pray for our family. I just wanted to share this because I'm sure I know we're not the only family going through this. So y'all just hold on. God bless y'all. Lord, if there's any marriages out there struggling right now that's watching, God, that you would go in and you would touch and restore this marriage, that you would reveal the hand of the enemy, God, and that you would raise this family back up out of the ashes that the devil's intended for them. In Jesus' name, amen. Y'all take care.